I'm going to reveal what I think are the real money-saving secrets Chinese people actually live by. And a lot of them, I learned directly from my dad, who is the most financially disciplined Chinese person I've ever met. I want to share those with you today. Quick note, because I get this a lot, I am 100% Chinese. My mom is from Beijing. My dad is from Shanghai. I've spent serious time in China too, about 6 months in Hong Kong, 6 months in Beijing, plus plenty of shorter trips. So pull up a chair and settle in. Now, the single most shocking thing about China, in my opinion, is this. As of late 2021, China's gross national savings rate was sitting at roughly 45 to 46% of GDP. Which means, for every $100 earned across the economy, about 46 of them are getting socked away. Compare that to the United States, where we are basically built around spending. Our personal savings rate usually floats somewhere between 3.5% and 5%. Let that sink in. You're looking at almost a 10 times gap in national saving behavior. So why are Chinese people so much better at keeping their money? The first reason is purely cultural. In America, we are constantly being hit with sales, installment plans, buy now, pay later, keep up with the Joneses pressure. Clothes are 70% off. Come in, free quote. 24-month financing, zero interest. Most of this mindset traces back to the post-World War II era. The Depression was still fresh, and the government actively framed spending as a patriotic act to drive economic recovery. Washington literally told citizens, go out and shop. China is a completely different world. Saving is treated as a deeply serious virtue. Money carries enormous meaning, and that meaning is reinforced by the country's demographics as well. One thing you'll notice quickly in China, people are genuinely reluctant to use installment plans. The default move is to pay cash, in full, whenever possible. They would rather wait and save than take on debt. Now, before I get into the actual techniques, let me explain the deeper reason Chinese people save, because once you understand the why, the how makes a lot more sense. The first why is simply this: the meaning of money. From childhood, kids are taught that saving isn't just a nice habit, it's something to be proud of. At Chinese New Year and on birthdays, children receive red envelopes stuffed with cash, and parents almost always tell them to put it away. That money has its own name, Ya Sui Qian, suppressing age money. Money matters so much in Chinese culture that the most common greeting during the biggest holiday of the year isn't even Happy New Year. Let me bring in comedian Ronnie Chieng, because he explains this better than I ever could. Even at Chinese New Year, the most important holiday of the year, when we run into each other, the way we greet each other is Gong 11 Facai. Or in Cantonese, Gong Hei Fat Choi. You've definitely heard it, right? Gong 11 Facai. Which literally translates as, wishing you to get rich. It's not Happy New Year. That's funny because it's also completely true. You'll also see it in how Chinese society treats wealth. Being rich is openly respected. It signals that you've made it. So success in China tends to convert pretty directly into money, which sets up the second big why, demographics. Until 2016, technically 36 full years, China ran the one-child policy. Introduced in the late 70s and early 80s, the rule strictly limited most families to a single child. Have a second, and you'd be hit with massive fines. If you couldn't pay, your second child often couldn't get a hukou, the household registration that unlocks healthcare, schooling, and just about every public service. Predictably, the birth rate collapsed. And because sons traditionally inherited the family name and the family assets, there was enormous pressure to produce boys, which led to sex-selective practices. At its worst, the national birth ratio climbed past 120 boys for every 100 girls. That imbalance has compounding effects. When you have a lot more men than women chasing the same pool of women in a society that openly rewards wealth, men face real pressure to look successful, which usually means looking rich. So you get a generation of Chinese men highly motivated to accumulate cash. There is also a knock-on effect from the one-child policy on the parent side. With only one child to raise, households can pour a much bigger share of their income straight into savings. So the one-child era created a double engine for saving. Parents spend less on children, and single sons feel intense pressure to stockpile wealth. There is one more structural reason Chinese people save aggressively. There is no 401k. No individual retirement account in the American sense. China's pension system exists, yes, but plenty of people are quietly worried it will be strained by the time they retire. So they self-insure. They pre-fund their own medical costs, their own kids' education, their own old age. Those are the main internal forces pushing the saving rate up. Now let's talk about the actual techniques, and honestly, the headline trick is almost embarrassingly simple. Chinese people just make every single dollar count. My dad, for example, always knew down to the penny, where his money had gone. The Western name for this system is zero-based budgeting. Here's how it works. You take your monthly income and assign every single dollar a job, so that at the end of the month, income minus all of your spending, including savings, investments, and debt payoff, equals exactly zero. Let me show you what this looks like with a simple example. Say you earn $4,000 a month. A zero-based budget might list rent, groceries, and essentials in one column. Then, in another column, you would have dedicated buckets for your emergency fund, your retirement account, student loan payments, a new car fund, and anything else you are saving toward. When you are done budgeting, look at the bottom right. You are left with $0 left over, because every dollar has been placed somewhere. That is the core idea. You can run this system from a notes app on your phone, but it does demand one thing from you: brutal honesty about every single expense. 4 variable categories most people need. About 3 months of tracking before they have a believable average to work from. Now, if you've watched my earlier videos, you know I never prescribe exact dollar amounts per category. Zero-based budgeting is no different. It is a framework. It forces you to see your full spending picture, separate the truly fixed costs from the flexible ones, and then deliberately place your money where you actually want it to go. All right. When Chinese families want to free up serious cash quickly, 4 factors tend to drive the savings, and I want to walk you through all of them. Before I do, if this is useful, please hit like and share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Also, if you're into economics and business, I run a totally free newsletter called Hump Day, twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. The link is in the description. I would genuinely love to see you there. Okay, factor 1. They are not obsessed with luxury goods or status symbols. Most Chinese households value a certain kind of quiet modesty. They prefer to fly under the radar, and flashy show-off spending is quietly looked down on. Factor 2. The moment they start earning, they deliberately try to live on a tiny sliver of that income. My dad grew up dirt poor in Shanghai. There were nights he literally went to bed hungry. On the days he could afford food at all, the only thing he could buy was manchu, a plain, cheap, flavorless steamed white bun. Because of that childhood, when he started working, every time he earned, say, $10, he would try to live on $1 of it. Could he actually survive on $1 out of 10? Realistically, no. Sometimes basic survival forced him to spend 6, 7, 8, even 9 of those 10. But the goal was never to get rich. The goal was to make sure he never again had to go to sleep hungry. That simple rule, save as much as you possibly can, spend as little as you can get away with, has stuck with me my entire life, and I think it's the dominant principle for a lot of Chinese households. If you want to build real wealth, it is a great rule to copy. But please know, it does install a scarcity mindset around money. Be aware of it. As your income grows, consciously let that mindset loosen into more of an abundance mindset. Factor 3. They pay obsessive attention to needs versus wants, and draw a very clean line between the two. There is also a smart twist. If something is a genuine need, especially one tied to your health, you spend on it without guilt. So if you are stuck choosing between a cheap, flimsy office chair and a proper ergonomic chair that keeps your back healthy through a long workday, the ergonomic chair is a need. Buy it. The point isn't to be miserly. It's to stop being wasteful. Now, don't push this logic to extremes. You need clothes, sure, but that doesn't automatically mean buying Gucci just because Gucci exists. The principle is to spend intelligently at the top of each need category, then ruthlessly cut anywhere you can cut. When it comes to pure wants, you can absolutely still buy them, but make sure each one earns its place by delivering strong long-term value. A quick example. Say you're dying for a $350 premium wallet. Cool. Then make yourself use that wallet for 5 solid years. Spread across 5 years, that $350 comes out to less than 20 cents a day. Spending is unavoidable. Everyone spends. The lesson here is just that the bulk of your decisions should be reasonable and disciplined. Factor 4. If you want to free up cash fast, eat at home. Have dinner at home. We literally have food at home. I think this one applies across most cultures. We all know restaurants charge way more than the actual cost of the food. In my family growing up, we ate out maybe once every 2 weeks. Almost every social gathering happened at our house. Hosting people over was the default form of socializing. Eating out was reserved for special occasions only. I really hope some of these techniques push you to start saving more deliberately. If you have your own, drop them in the comments. I genuinely read them. And like Chinese people say to each other at New Year, Gong 11 FACAI. Wishing you prosperity. Definitely check out Hump Day, the newsletter. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. A short note on what I actually changed. tightened the opening hook so the value proposition lands in the first 10 seconds, smoothed the bridges between the cultural section and the demographic section so the why feels like one continuous argument instead of two separate blocks, softened the savings rate and sex ratio figures to ranges that hold up against the underlying data. China's gross savings rate has sat roughly in the mid-30s to mid-40s of GDP depending on the year and the measure. The birth-sex ratio peaked above 120 boys per 100 girls, but exact peaks vary by source. Kept your dad's Manchu story and the Ronnie Chiang gag as paraphrase rather than translation so the rhythm still sounds like a real human talking, and trimmed the budgeting walkthrough so it stays a framework, not a prescription. Numbers I did verify. The one-child policy ran from 1979 through 2016 and US personal savings has consistently sat in the low single digits, so those claims stay clean.